So what actually happened with Prime Trust? I mean, I know, but you're going to explain it better. Because at first when I heard about it, I assumed it would just been some, like most rugs / failures, they tend to be some misuse of funds, some kind of rehypothecation, or, well, I mean, we've had Machinsky arrested today, essentially gambling with funds and doing funky things with people's funds. To me, it sounded like it started with a very poor administrative error.
That is my understanding. I think so. So the short answer is they screwed up key management, right? And I think my background is software engineering and cryptography and computer security. Like, I deeply understand how easy it is to mess stuff up when it comes to securing cryptographic material. Like, the math of like Bitcoin is not the same as the reality of actually like doing it all with a computer, which is just like a complex machine that sometimes messes up and has errors. And then you have humans on top of that have to make sure that it all keeps working properly. So the short answer is they messed up key management. The higher level sort of takeaway here is that, so they were actually in a category of companies. So they were a regulated trust company. So they had this sort of special status as a trust company, which is chartered by a state that allows them to kind of serve like a higher grade of sort of financial and custody services for all sorts of things, dollars, Bitcoin, securities, all sorts of things. But the thing is, this whole sort of like legal regime wasn't built for Bitcoin. It wasn't built for cryptocurrency. If you think about it, right, there was never really like a type of property that a trust company had to was the fiduciary for, or had to sort of keep safe, that could just kind of go poof, right? Like, it was securities, which was like legal ownership in a company. Like, it's just like the definition of the law. You have this right to this cash flow. It's not like it just disappears someday, right? Or it's this piece of property, right, in a trust for a family. It's a ranch. Like, the ranch isn't going anywhere. It's right there. Like, someone can't just steal it, right? And so, the legal structure was around sort of how they need to do accounting, how they need to do, make sure they're not commingling assets and using the assets they're custodying. And so all the rules are basically around making sure they're not fraudsters. Mm-hmm. And they, as far as I know, sort of from at least at a very basic level, they didn't steal anyone's assets. What happened was, from it sounds like from the disclosures, they had a wallet. They had from my understanding, a hardware wallet that was originally used to custody customers' assets, and eventually there was some management change and some change in the company, and that wallet was discontinued to be used. It was no longer used. But then something happened where some change was made to the system that re-enabled deposits to those addresses. It started distributing addresses to this old wallet to new customers to send assets to. And they didn't realize that wallet, they no longer had access to that wallet. So assets were being sent to a black hole.
So it wouldn't have, when you say there was a hardware wallet, it wouldn't be a single hardware wallet managing customer funds.
I don't know. I don't know. Like, I don't know these details, right?
It's funny because you do sometimes wonder what really, like, I personally have two multi-sig solutions. I use Unchained and I use Casa for separate things. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty diligent about what I do. And I sometimes wonder if some of these companies are really just like maybe operating with one ledger that's locked in a safe somewhere. And it's like all their customer funds are on this one ledger.
Well, some are. And that's what I was getting at with my description of sort of this legal regime, which is a lot of people assume that, like, this is like a fiat credential, right? Yeah. Being a trust company. Nowhere in the process of getting that trust charter did anyone have to prove they knew anything about cryptography.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can end up with a bunch of guys that know how to run a bank with a trust charter, and they're now responsible for custodying Bitcoin, but they don't know how to do that. And so it's sort of like not like being a trust company is probably good enough to make sure your stocks and your real estate is safe in these like entities or something, right? But that will not tell you whether or not your Bitcoin's going to be safe, because just like you said, there's nothing preventing them from just having a ledger in a closet. Yeah, that's like sort of the nature of this. So these fiat sort of checklist things that protected traditional assets don't really apply well to Bitcoin.
And so as far as we know at the moment, that hardware wallet they retired, they just burnt the keys for.
I don't know exactly what happened. I mean, it could be that like they didn't keep a backup of the seed and someone burned through the pins on the device. Like, who knows? There's so many failure modes with key management that it could be a number of things, right? I can list all sorts of ways I actually did a poll recently on Twitter where I asked, if you have ever lost Bitcoin, how did you lose it? Did you lose access to the keys, or did you have it stolen? And like 10-1, it was lost access to the keys.
Oh, wow.
And this is like kind of where some of my opinions get a little heretical, but like you are way more likely to just lose access to your Bitcoin than to actually have your Bitcoin stolen.
I mean, I've been through a couple of near misses.
Yeah.
I had a Trezor that had like 3.5 Bitcoin on it at one point, and I didn't know where I'd written down the pin.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew what the pin was. Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Danny's just brought up the poll. So
it was more like
it's 3% keys
6-1.
Compromised, 18.2% lost access. The rest is see the results. Yeah. That's mad. And I was going through the guesses. I kind of knew what number it was, but I didn't know the exact number. But the problem is, every time you get it wrong, you have to wait a little bit longer. And, you get to the point where you have to wait days. I eventually got it, and so that was fine. And then there was another one recently whereby the seed that I'd stored wouldn't work to restore a device, and I was like fucking panicking. I had a different seed stored elsewhere. It was just things like that. And so I put my Jameson lot pad on. I was like, every 6 months, I need to run through and test everything. Now, look, I'm not too worried now. I'm in multi-sig and most solutions, but I've always had that separate wallet with like a small float on it.
Yeah.
Have you ever lost Bitcoin?
No, I don't think so. Touch wood.
Have you ever lost Bitcoin?
No, I've never lost Bitcoin, but I've lost like random alts back in the day.
Yeah.
Like, actually, but a lot of people lost Bitcoin early on because it wasn't worth anything.
Yeah.
So they didn't bother like remembering their password. It's like, I have $10 of Bitcoin on here in 2011.
There's a guy in the UK that every bull run comes up because he threw a hard drive away. Do you know about this guy?
Yes.
How much is that hard drive worth now?
I can't remember. He's always looking in skips for it.
Yeah, he's always looking at the skips. And so he actually tried to do a deal with the local council, and said, we want to excavate the tip. And he had a venture capital fund willing to invest in the cost of doing it, and they rejected it. But I'm sure it's like 170 million.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
But the next one is it get to a point where it's over $1 billion.
8,000 Bitcoin.
8,000 Bitcoin.
An interesting thought experiment that I've sort of I think is always funny is like, if you've lost Bitcoin by losing access to your keys, if you had just had your seed words in your Google Drive, what is the likelihood you would have lost your Bitcoin, right? Probably much lower. I'm not saying
Don't do that.
You should do that.
This is not advice from Alex.
I'm not saying that's what you should do, but it's like an interesting thing to think about, right?
Yeah, but there's like lesser ones you can do. Like you can have a seed plate and leave it under your bed.
Yes.
Or,
I'm a seed plate fan.
Yeah.
I'm a seed plate fan. Yes.
Yeah, I'm a Casa fan in that you don't actually need, they're 3 or 5. You don't actually need to keep your seed. You can go seedless with that because, one's on your phone. They've got one. You've got 3 others. You can rotate them. I do keep one magically hidden away somewhere for one of them, but you can. I'm a little bit more worried on my seeds with my, say, 2 or 3 because it's a slightly different scenario. But yeah, look, there's a range of different things you can do.
Yeah, but one of these things happened, at Prime Trust.
Yeah,
and so yeah, doing it yourself, right? But then also at an institutional level, institutions at a whole nother level of complexity and this requirement for institutional permanence. Like with you, it's 1-to-1. It's always you. No matter what you do in your life, you're that guy responsible for that custody. Institutions aren't people. It's an it's an entity. People come and go, right? And if you don't have the right sort of structures built into the institution to do key management properly, it's really easy to mess up. It's really easy for these things to happen.